Welcome to the OR Today webinar series. We are excited for today's presentation featuring Michelle Lemmons, OR Clinical Educator at Key Surgical. OR Today would like to thank our sponsor, Key Surgical, a leading global provider of sterile processing, operating room, and endoscopy products that support processes and procedures in hospitals and surgical facilities throughout the U.S. and internationally. For more information, visit keysurgical.com. Today's webinar is eligible for one continuing education hour by the California Board of Registered Nurses. You can obtain your certificate by completing today's post-webinar survey. The survey will be emailed 1 hour after the completion of today's webinar. You must complete the survey to receive your CE hour, and you will be able to download the certificate directly from your computer once the survey is submitted. If you have any questions, you can reach us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. As I mentioned earlier, Michelle Lemmons is our presenter today. Michelle has over 10 years of healthcare experience, including admissions, OR, acute care, post-acute care, transitional care, and long-term care. She also worked as a scrub nurse and circulator for the CV Thoracic General Team at the University of Minnesota Medical Center and is passionate about nursing, healthcare, and individuals using their strengths to support teams and realize their full potential. Michelle, you may begin whenever you are ready.
Well, thank you so much. That was a great introduction. I'm really excited to be here again speaking with you all. I have done one other OR Today webinar and it's really great. And so I'm excited to be here. We got great feedback last time. So please ask a question, use the chat function. I really would love to hear from you. I wish I was here seeing your responses real time, that we were able to be together. But first, I just like to start with a little about me. That's something important to me, nursing and just in general, that people kind of know who I am and what I'm about, because that's something I really enjoy, knowing about other people. So as already stated, I've been an RN for about 7 years, a little over, and I worked in healthcare for a little over 10 years in just various roles. This first photo is a photo of my husband and I. His name is Josh, this Christmas in our homemade ugly Christmas sweaters, which very sadly, as you can see, they were really great, but we did not win. My husband, Josh, is a nurse as well, and we have 2 children, Jackson and Opal, a little boy and a little girl. And these 2 are always on the run. They love to have fun. They have this little blue Jeep and they go tearing all around the yard, which is super fun. Currently, they love to dance to Meghan Trainor and Taylor Swift all over the house. As stated a little bit before, I'll kind of restate, I'm really passionate about education. I'm not passionate about telling people what they should do and what they should know all the time, but I am passionate about education that enhances your mind, your heart, your skills, and prepares and encourages you to move closer to your own goals, and of course, the best possible patient care. And today is absolutely no different. Collaboration is a huge part of success in all areas of our life, so let's get started. First, we start all of our presentations at Key Surgical Education with just a short disclaimer. We do our due diligence to provide you with the best, most up-to-date research and information. But that being said, this education does not take the place of your facility's policies or any published guidelines and standards. So how many of you have ever gotten very excited about a new idea that you believe could have a significant positive effect on your department, only to have the idea fall flat or actually never get off the ground because of interactions with another department or because of a challenge with leadership? I know that I certainly have. So during this presentation, we will start by defining collaboration. We'll describe the difference between cooperation and collaboration, paraphrase research that supports the success of collaboration and how to do that successfully, list tools that are used to achieve successful collaboration, We'll describe ways that you can be a proactive participant in collaboration, and we'll outline leadership styles that impact collaboration. By the end of this presentation, I plan to give you new insights and tools to help eliminate barriers to achieving those successes within your department and beyond. So what is collaboration? It might seem elementary to define collaboration, but I think it's vital to level set the definition so we can use it to compare, contrast, and clarify our goals. Collaboration is defined as working together jointly, especially in an intellectual endeavor. When I first mentioned this to my husband, who loves to study words and literally likes to read the dictionary, which is kind of funny to me, he said, well, yeah, co-labor. And I just thought that was so simple, but so profound. That's literally what it is, co-labor. However, to fully grasp what that means, we also have to define cooperation. Cooperation is defined as working with another or working with others. And the favorite way that I've ever read it is to work in compliance, because that's truly how I think cooperation happens within our teams and departments. One person leads and the others do their part to accomplish the assignment by the due date. When I first saw these two images side by side, it made a huge impact in my true understanding of the difference. In our personal and professional lives, we use both of these all the time, and they're both very valuable in their own way. For example, my husband and I are doing a project on our house, and we've been doing multiple projects. It's just something we like to do together. But recently we gutted our laundry room to make it a laundry room and bathroom. After we gutted the room, we stood in the empty space and discussed ideas, different experiences we've had. We asked for input from aunts and friends, my mother-in-law, my sisters, and even our 3-year-old. Just what ideas would he have? Just the best way to lay out the room. So we collaborated, truly. We listened to all of those ideas and entertained them. We also cooperated to make a decision and to make progress on the goal. Very often in the workplace, we think of generating or implementing a new idea, a new goal, or rolling out new training, new education, new instruments, just like that image on the left, like cooperation. Everybody doing their job to complete the list of tasks that you've been told to do. But what if that's not the best way? Imagine the possibilities if we could apply collaboration more and sincerely in the workplace. New ways of charting, new tools, new equipment. What if we collaborated first and then made those changes second? We would have a radical opportunity to change our work practices for the better. In a recent TED Talk by Rebecca Love, who's an experienced nurse entrepreneur and the previous director of nurse innovation and entrepreneurship at Northeastern School of Nursing, she stated that nurses do approximately 27 workarounds per shift. That means that 27 times in 8 to 12 hours, whatever their shift is, they're faced with an inefficiency, inconvenience, or illogical way to do something. So we do it differently to save time, to make it easier, or because it's just more practical. And that's only considering nurses. That didn't even consider any other healthcare professional. I cannot imagine the number that it would be if we included all of them in healthcare. I think often in my own experience, when I was considering that 27 times, I was like, well, if I really thought about it, it's so built into the job that we just make something work for us that doesn't work. But what if we could collaborate before we rolled out those things? And what if we were able to collaborate now on the things that are not working? They don't save time, they are not safe, and think of the energy that we could save. And the good news is we can. In fact, teams of people working together for a common purpose have been a centerpiece of social organization ever since our ancestors first banded together to raise families, defend their communities, and hunt game. Human history is full. It is riddled with stories of people and communities working together in groups to explore, to achieve, and to conquer big goals that they weren't able to do on their own. The perfect example that everybody has at least been acquainted with sometime in their life is prehistoric man and the woolly mammoth. Now, what part of historians and researchers are able to tell us is that hunters from many different communities banded together to hunt these animals. When you think of different communities, this also includes different languages, different cultural practices, and personal differences, just like you and I and every department in the hospital. They were able to put all of that aside to unite to achieve this very large goal. For generations, many scholars assumed that mammoth-human interactions were limited to humans actually scavenging deceased mammoths for fur, ivory, bones, for those types of things. But new research that actually came out in 2019 asserts and found that early man did in fact hunt mammoths. And here's what we know. The typical woolly mammoth was around 3 meters tall, which is about 11 feet. Compared to a 4-foot OR table or a 6-foot adult, that is massive. There's virtually no way that a single person with the tools they had at that time could have taken down this creature. Additionally, the woolly mammoth weighed roughly 6 tons or 12,000 pounds. When I hear numbers like that, it's very hard for me to grasp. So I tried to think of something that would be something that we've all at least been acquainted with. And of course, I came up with the OR table, which I personally have never tried to lift because in my mind, that is far beyond my capacity, my strength. But the average OR table weighs 500 pounds. So that means you would have to stack 24 OR tables on top of each other to equal the weight of one woolly mammoth. That's an incredibly grand animal and could supply many communities with food and supplies. And again, this is only one example of multiple ways that humans have collaborated for generations to achieve high goals, to meet demand with supply, and also to avoid waste, which is pretty great. So I know what you're thinking, or at least if you're me, what you were thinking. Michelle, are 2 heads really better than 1? We've all heard those 2 dreaded words, group project. These are popular cringe-inducing words in school and professionally because we all knew what that actually meant. 2 people would do the work and the other 2 would get drug along like toilet paper on the shoe and get your grade. Sometimes they would actually work against the goal. But let's look into some research about functioning in groups and then detail how we can successfully set up collaborative groups and avoid kind of dragging people along that aren't doing anything. One of the most challenging things in groups is there's usually one person who sticks out immediately for their volume and or confidence. And immediately in these groups, that person tells you the best way that it should be done, or the only way that it can be done. Can collaboration be successful if this person is so outspoken? Well, research tells us yes. In a 2014 article in the Journal of Experimental Psychology, they detailed 2 different research studies to deduce how group decisions are actually made. In the first study, participants were given a problem. They were asked to provide their answer, justification for their answer, but they weren't allowed to use confidence language or words that elicited confidence, such as obviously or clearly. So the other participants were then given the opportunity to read everybody's responses. And after reading the other responses, they could change their answer based on what they were reading. And what they found was that participants were significantly more likely to change their answer when their answer was wrong, and they were provided with an argument for the correct answer, which of course they didn't know if it was correct or not. But this really made the impact that good arguments can truly have an impact on decision making. They can be used to change people's minds, volume aside and confidence aside, the argument itself. In a subsequent experiment, participants were given a reasoning task individually, and they were asked again to formulate an answer, provide confidence and justification. Then they were split up into groups of 3 to 5, and in those groups, they had to decide on the right answer. And eventually they agreed, they had to agree on it. And the finding of this was actually very interesting. All of those groups that were split up into 3 to 5 ended up choosing the correct answer if the correct answer was one that could be chosen. So together, these studies could point to group decision-making being driven by sound argumentation, statistical averaging, and social motivation, not the loudest or the most confident person in the group, which in my opinion is very encouraging, because studies like these can be used to help us facilitate collaboration in the most effective way to achieve the best outcome. Secondly, we must clarify, are 2 heads actually better than 1? And the short answer is yes, but there is a caveat, which is very similar to the studies we just read. In an article published in 1971, and yes, 1971, I implore you to read this. It's so well written, and it's absolutely still pertinent and relevant. The article was published in the Academy of Management Journal by Andrew Van de Ven, who's an American organization scholar and professor emeritus at the Carlson School of Management, actually here in Minnesota, and his friend and fellow professor, Andre Delbecchi. So they researched and detailed literature surrounding group work, processes, and problem-solving committees. And here's what they found. They found that 2 heads that work together in a group are better than 1, but the caveat is 2 independent heads are better than 1 group of 2 heads. Their research paper concluded that allowing group members to independently review and process information, respond with rationale, and then come together to decide what they found was the most successful way to have group interactions. In fact, more research shows that people in groups perform better than independently in achieving successful and correct outcomes. So each of these studies, all independently, found a few common threads. First is that group members should have the time and space to assess the information and generate their own ideas and responses first. Each person needs that time to absorb what they're reading and filter it through their experiences before they bring it to a group. Secondly, there should be a structured feedback process during the interaction. How is that interaction going to go? And third, they suggest that group voting should be completed independently. Not everybody raise your hand at the table, but they should be able to discreetly respond. These are great considerations for reflection on previous collaboration successes and failures, and also for future collaborative goals. So let's take a look at 8 suggested steps, or the 8 ways to set up a very successful collaboration. These how-to steps for collaboration were taken from a document published by, actually, again, the University of Minnesota in 2006, which was called The Design and Implementation of Cross-Sector Collaborations, Propositions from the Literature. And the article was written and published in the Public Administration Review, which is a journal for practitioners, scholars, teachers, and trainers who are interested in the public sector and public sector management. So this research and guidelines for successful collaboration were created for public health crisis planning and preparation, but I do believe they're absolutely pertinent to the hospital setting as well. OR, sterile processing, all of the different departments in the hospital, we have to work together to formulate some pretty lofty goals and preparedness. So the first thing that they suggested was to forge initial agreements. That means telling people what this collaboration is and what is the goal. Informal ideas and agreements about how the collaboration is going to be made up can be really good for the group, but formal, objective, documented agreements and goals have the advantage of supporting accountability and success. So having an end date and a very explicit goal for what you're going to solve. Secondly, collaborative groups need to build leadership. I really like collaboration as it offers multiple opportunities for formal and informal leaders to gain experience, to reveal themselves, and to shine. Just like we were talking about a few minutes ago, sometimes someone who's very confident doesn't have a problem seeking out leadership opportunities, but it doesn't necessarily mean they'll be the best leader for that position. So these collaborations are a really great way to tease out who's ready or who would be ready if they had different types of skills. The first example that came to mind is when I was new to the OR, we became aware that the OR emergency case cart, or the crash cart that lived in the ICU, was not being used well. It wasn't organized well, and that ICU nurses actually had not been trained on how to set up and maintain a sterile field for an emergency open in ICU. So what would happen is the ICU nurses, techs, CNAs, physicians, residents, they would open up the crash cart on the floor, and by the time the OR staff got there, the instruments and sterile field would be totally contaminated. Half the room was not wearing a mask, not wearing a bouffant, not wearing sterile gloves, and grabbing things off the Mayo stand at no fault of their own, but the cart was disorganized and they did not have training, and no one was responsible for maintaining, checking, or stocking the cart. Sterile processing would end up reprocessing double or triple the instruments, and it was just kind of a mess and causing a lot of conflict between the departments. So we formed a collaboration between OR, ICU, sterile processing, and leadership to create an efficient plan, training, cart flow, and communication flow for restocking the cart. This was a great opportunity for me to gain experience as an informal leader. I partnered with an incredibly experienced and wise surgical tech. Her name is Laura Juve, who is amazing. And we were able to reorganize the cart and train the ICU staff. I gained experience and learned a lot about leadership and how leadership and guidelines impact how we make changes at our facility. And I also gained the building blocks for leadership and collaboration. Along with many others, it's a great opportunity to develop and build leaders. Next is collaboration needs to and does build legitimacy. In order for a collaboration to be successful, it has to have legitimacy or respect from the people and places that it needs resources, support, or time from. This can be built in part by the group members and their affiliations and relationships, but also largely affected by the next tool, which is building trust. Many researchers realize that collaborations begin with varying degrees of trust within themselves or the group members, but they also emphasize that trust building is an ongoing requirement for successful collaboration throughout the lifetime of the collaboration. Collaboration partners build trust by sharing information and knowledge and demonstrating competency, good intentions, and follow through. It's so vital to celebrate small wins together to develop trust. In the words of my favorite author and Harvard business professor, Frances Frye, she says, "It is my belief that trust is the foundation of everything we do." In their new book called Unleashed, she and her wife, Ann Morris, described their experiences transforming leaders and companies through trust, which is built in their book and in their experience on authenticity, logic, and empathy. Next, successful collaborations require conflict management. Tell me a situation in which multiple people work together to discover and implement a solution and I will tell you a story of conflict resolution and conflict management. This is to be expected. Conflict in collaboration emerges for a multitude of reasons and can be a healthy, productive part of collaboration if managed swiftly and respectfully. Ideally, boundaries for respect and behavior would be set before the conflict arises, and then those boundaries can be used to address the conflict. The next tool is planning. Planning requires formulating those plans, but also holding them loosely. So there are two plans to keep in mind. The deliberate plan of the collaboration, and that's careful articulation of the mission, goals, and objectives. But this also includes emergent plans. This approach argues that a clear understanding of mission and goals and roles is more likely to emerge over time as conversations that involve individuals and groups grow to encompass a broader network of people. However, something we discovered within our own team, our education team and our key surgical team, is that it's important that as new plans emerge throughout collaboration, it's vital to evaluate them and ensure that they still go along toward your goal, or do they need to be separated and used to make a new plan for a new collaboration. It's important not to bite off more than you can chew or try to umbrella everything that pops up during a collaboration into that same plan. Next is creating structure. Structures, of course, are likely to be dynamic because of ambiguity and complexity that is inherent in collaborations. Ambiguity can arise from many features of membership in a collaboration, including the perceptions of who belongs in collaboration, including social interactions, and who and what each member represents, such as one surgical tech could represent all of the surgical techs in the OR. Additionally, turnover among group members. Membership turnover can be especially important when key players, or maybe the person who does do a certain job, leave or other people join. Each collaboration will have a detailed structure that should also be transparent and dynamic. And the final tool for successful collaboration is governance. Is your collaborative group going to meet regularly? Or is it going to be formal? Is it informal, or does that change? Will only a few members meet each time? Contingencies such as network size and the degrees of trust among members influence which type of governance is most appropriate. And leadership choice is critical also to match for the type of governance. So those are a few things about what makes collaborations very successful when these tools are in place. And those 8 tools are great tools for success, considerations for success. But there are also some pretty classic and glaring ways that collaboration can be ruined. The first, and a personal pet peeve of mine, is working in silos. This is that age-old phrase of "that's not my job," or only thinking through decisions from a narrow perspective of how it will or has previously affected your department. There is no point in collaborating if we will just join to point fingers and place blame, not taking responsibility for a piece of the greater pie. As cliche as it sounds, it is all of our jobs. There are so many stories and instances where empowering each person, from the nurse to the housekeeper to the receptionist, all of us, it takes all of us, has saved a patient's life, literally. So we can all agree that the more we know, the better we can prepare and protect our patients. No working in silos. Secondly is lack of training. Not having proper training should not prevent you from participating in collaboration or being confident that you are an incredibly valuable member of the collaborative process. Not having the training is actually a perfect place to start. You learn very quickly what training you need, and it can give you the opportunity to gain experiences and kind of focus in on where to begin. Many new nurses that I have trained have been the ones to actually open my eyes to new ideas, to stretch me, and to teach me. Get the training you need to be safe and advanced, but don't be afraid to try something new. The third way of ruining collaboration is strict hierarchy. Nothing will shut down creativity and productivity faster than a rigid hierarchy. There's a time and a place for these types of relationships, but in a collaboration, this can very quickly defeat motivation and participation. And finally, there's that word again, trust, a lack of trust. There's nothing that we do personally and professionally that is not affected by trust. In and out of the group, it's important to be trustworthy. Do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. Admit when you're wrong, apologize, and keep people's confidence. If you cannot be trusted, you will not be successful, promotable, or considered for opportunities. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about leadership and collaboration. Over the last 10 years of healthcare, I have worked for many types of leaders. People who pushed me and gave me opportunities to be better. People who worked with me for years and still do not know my name. And if I'm being completely honest, people who I wish did not know my name. There are certain prevailing leadership styles that are common, recognizable, and that are not going anywhere. It's common to hear people in healthcare, at least in different arenas that I've been in, say, I have a great idea, but leadership, it's never going to happen. I'd like to look at some common leadership styles, their pros and cons, and then discuss ways that you can be successful in working in a collaboration with these types of leaders. I'd like to state from the beginning, I'm not putting any leader or a participant in a box. While you might recognize yourself in some of these or your leaders, it really is just the maybe most prevailing or primary trait. None of these totally encompass one person because we are so much more than just one trait, each of us. So in 1939, a group of researchers led by psychologist Kurt Lewin set out to identify different leadership styles and their most prevailing traits. And while there's absolutely more styles that are not detailed in this presentation, we'll just cover the most common. So first is autocratic leadership, also known as authoritarian leadership. These leaders desire individual control over all decisions and desire little input from any group members. Some pros of this are these leaders are direct. There will be absolutely no guessing if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing when you're supposed to be doing it in this group. They will let you know. Another positive is that typically with these leaders, the expectations are very clear and stated upfront. They'll tell you what to do, how to do it, and when to do it. And finally, these leaders are decisive. There will be an objective goal and an end date, and you will meet that is kind of the dialogue that goes along with that. A few cons of this type of leadership are when you're collaborating, a controlling, decisive leader tends to crush morale and crush creativity. That can limit idea generation and solution generation. Also, attempting to collaborate with someone who doesn't want to hear anything you have to say or doesn't give it any credit can be isolating and frustrating and create hostility within a collaboration. Next is the participative leadership. It's also called a democratic leadership. So democratic leaders are associated with offering guidance to group members while also participating in the group and allowing input from all group members. A few pros are that creativity under a participative leader is very high, as each member is encouraged to freely share their thoughts. Group members under this type of leader are typically very committed as they feel that they are a vital member of the team and able to share their ideas and solutions freely. And finally, there's quite a bit of research that shows that these types of leaders inspire productivity in their individual members. That may not be productivity for the whole group, but each individual member spurs more productivity under these types of leaders. A few cons. While freely sharing ideas is great for creativity, there is some studies that show it can inhibit decisiveness. Further, a participative leader can have communication problems within their collaborations, especially related to solution choice. If there's 10 people in the collaboration and all 10 share their ideas and only one is chosen, that can create some questions and communication problems between the leader and also among the group members. And finally is individuality. Minority or individual opinions may be overridden or overlooked by the group majority under this type of leadership, as the research shows. Next is laissez-faire leadership or delegated leadership. When I was memorizing these in schools, I think I said laissez-faire probably for a year, but just to remember it and recall exactly the type of leadership this is. So this is a very hands-off leadership style. This type of leader is excellent at offering autonomy. They're also they're associated with offering resources and advice, with lots of it. A few cons with this type of leader are that the groups can lack decisiveness and decision-making. Often there's unclear roles as it's hands-off and the group members are kind of just to make their own way or make their own rules. And that can lead to a lack of productivity and motivation within their group members. The last type, kind of the new kid on the block, is transformative leadership. And this is the newest type. Often these leaders are viewed as practicing what they preach. They're more than just being involved in the discussion. They often served as an idealized role model for leadership within their groups that align with their beliefs. These leaders are known to spend a considerable amount of time getting to know the individuality of each group members, and they're actually associated with the highest level of productivity. Some of the cons with the transformative leader or transformative leadership is that groups may require a more autocratic, or groups that may require a stricter or more direct leader can tend not to be divisive, or kind of to lose that direction if they're a newer group under a newer leader that needs a little more oversight. So I was told, screenshot this page. These are the keys to success. These types of leaders are not going anywhere. These primary traits of each person are not going anywhere, but acknowledging these types of styles and kind of teasing out what the primary trait is can really help you to formulate a successful collaboration. So with the autocratic leader, it will be vital for you as a member or you as a leader to practice honesty, to establish boundaries, and to absolutely take the time to pause and celebrate victory, not compete with each other, celebrating each other's victories together. With a participative leader or democratic leader, it's important to establish clear goals, a deadline, and then ensure that you're listening for that minority so that the majority voice doesn't just wipe out the others in the group. With a laissez-faire leader, it's important to ask for objective expectations, to ask for deadlines, to know your team members, and to get a partner or a mentor within your team to ensure that your roles and your deadlines are clear. And finally, with the transformative leader, again, that getting a mentor or a partner, especially if you're new to collaborations or leadership, can be very vital to ensure that the mission and the clarity of your goal stay direct. I would be absolutely remiss if I did not mention after this. I need to be very clear that learning how to work with different types of leaders is not a free pass to allow yourself to be treated poorly or bullied. Bullying should not be tolerated and is distinctly different from leadership styles. In fact, bullying is not leadership. Bullying is often accomplished by isolation, intimidation, and threats. One of my personal passions, I guess, is to encourage people to advocate for themselves, and their own safety, protection, and to meet their own goals, not to just learn how to deal with a bullying boss. So in case you feel like you are the only one who has a bullying boss, I came across some pretty staggering statistics that I would just like to read to you. 61% of employees are aware of abusive conduct in the workplace. 19% of employees have experienced it, and another 19% have witnessed it. 29% of people who see bullying in the workplace, the victims of bullying in the workplace will remain silent and say nothing. 65% of bullied employees lose their jobs. So the person being bullied actually ends up losing their job. And very interestingly, some of these statistics say that 80% of women bully other women, which makes me very sad as a woman who just truly thinks we should be right there encouraging each other. So just very briefly, I would like to talk through some tools to how to overcome a bullying boss. First and foremost is that bullying can sometimes be challenging to notice and hard to address. So it's vital to give yourself permission to just say, hey, I am being bullied, being isolated, being called more than others, or asked to do things that are different than other people. Being humiliated, talked down to, it is bullying. Observe it and be okay to call it what it is. Secondly is document as objectively as you possibly can with dates, times, and direct quotes, filling out incident reports, following the flow that's established at your facility. Third, think of some of your boundaries. How do you expect to be treated and what are your expectations? Write them down, discuss it with someone if you need to. Fourth, if you are comfortable or you feel like you're able to confront this person, as objectively as possible, telling them examples of ways that you believe that you are being bullied and communicating the boundaries that you need established. Fifth or fourth, however you need to do it, is earning the support of others. As stated before, 61% of employees are aware of bullying and abuse in the workplace. There is another person that is around you that does see it. Unless those other people to help you encourage yourself to set those boundaries and demand different treatment. And finally, there is no greater priority than your safety. Studies actually show that people who are being bullied at work experience stress, damaged self-esteem, impaired physical and emotional health, and weakened cognitive functioning. Leave the room, end the call out the behavior, and get some help. Go higher than that person. You don't need to have that treatment. So I had to throw that in there. Learning a leadership style is not accepting bullying. It's not the same. Well, we have talked a lot about collaboration, cooperation, and different leadership styles. And now that we have a level set of each of these, which is best? What type of leader should leaders be? Is cooperation for the birds, and we should only focus on collaboration? Well, no. As cheesy and altruistic as it sounds, success requires all of these things, all of these kinds, in order for our success to be achieved. And if you have an opportunity to make a cheesy 90s wall art for your presentation, you should always do it. But seriously, it does require each of these types of leadership. It requires cooperation and collaboration. And all of these are vital to reaching our goals and working across departments. In short, it takes all kinds of kinds to serve all kinds of kinds. While codes in the hospital are very serious, I really wish that every person who is a healthcare worker or not could witness a code being called in a hospital. They would see the wide variation of people, specialties, and disciplines that respond to help someone. There's no one kind at that time who is superior to the others. We absolutely need each other. It's just it's a beautiful moment of collaboration and unity. So what can you take away? What's the easy takeaway steps for today when you go back to your room or floor or unit? Leaders, I will address you first. As a leader, it's important to know your own leadership style. It doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means you know what you bring to the table so that you can better serve your employees and also be a better collaborator. The absolute last thing any employee wants to hear from you is, well, that's the way it is, or that's the way it's always been. There's nothing more defeating than hearing that. So take ownership. It sounds, when you hear that, it sounds more like, I don't care about your concerns, or do your job and don't bother me. Instead, it would be easier to be transparent about the challenges that are there to addressing their concern or to changing that. Listen, repeat for understanding. Sometimes it's just simply the wrong question and the solution is right in front of you. Third, be trustworthy. Do what you say you're going to do when you're going to do it, and be transparent about it. And finally, have fun. It can be a lot of pressure to be in a leadership role, but also you have this unique and great opportunity to get to know the intricacies that make each of your team members who they are, which can be very fun. And for individuals, what can I do? Practice, yes. This sounds a little bit funny, but earlier this year, I took a class from a nurse coworker of mine, and she said, imagine if you opened up your closet to a closet full of yes. And I think my brain exploded. It was so profound. We spend a lot of time deciding what we're going to say yes to when we've already said yes to other things. So practice no, say no to things that you don't want to spend your time on so that you can do things that you actually enjoy and give something an opportunity. The next is practice active complaining. One of my coworkers sent me a LinkedIn comment the other day by someone. Complaining is not inherently bad. It just is what happens to it afterwards and within it. If you spend time complaining about a person or a process or something very frustrating, practice active complaining. Also be involved in the solution generation and figuring out how that can be changed in the future. Third, be trustworthy. Again, that's trust word again and again and again. Do what you say you're going to do when you're going to do it. Keep confidence. And then be willing to start. It can be intimidating when you don't feel like you're prepared or have the training or have the time, but be willing to try something new. I'll end with, again, Frances Fry, my favorite author, said, collaboration happens in daylight. Working with people outside of your comfort zone can provide you with skills, theories, and methods that absolutely enrich who you are. Bring your whole unique self to collaboration. No one else at that table or in that group knows what you know or has the experiences that you have. You are very valuable. The other wonderful thing about collaboration is that we have a great assurance in working in the hospital setting that each and every ounce of energy we spend on improvements impacts a patient's life experience. And that is an incredibly rich reward, even though we all don't get that one-to-one to hear the stories about how it's impacted a person in their real life or in their life outside of the hospital. But I hope you're all encouraged to go and try new types of collaboration in your workplace. And I really thank you for your time and for being here with me today. This is my contact information, and I think we have time for a couple of questions.
Hi, Michelle. Yes, we do. We've had some come through for an attendees, so I want to go ahead and get to those since we have a few minutes remaining. The first question, thanks so much for this education. It was really helpful. I need more credits for my certification. Do you offer other webinars or credits?
Yes, we do actually. So as it's on the screen right now at our education@keysurgical.com, we have free education webinars, we have CEs, we have all sorts of different education on there that are available for sterile processing and registered nurse credits. And in October, actually, I will be back here again on OR Today. I'll be doing a presentation about patient positioning in the operating room.
Excellent. The next question we have here, I've been a nurse for a number of years, but I'm hoping for leadership opportunities. Which leadership style should I study, or what advice do you have for me to bolster my leadership styles and become a good leader?
Sure, that's a really good question. I I think the first thing is that's awesome that you're looking for leadership opportunities. I don't think that any is best. I think knowing kind of where you're at right now, we're all a leader somewhere in our life already. So kind of studying the things that you do already and the things about that you like and the things that are going well and not. Also seeing other people that you think, man, I really glean a lot of great things from this type of leader, and starting there. And then again, kind of as we detailed, look for those opportunities. What are you already passionate about? Are you passionate about patient positioning? And so you can join the skincare team or the team that investigates wounds and things like that. Get involved where you're already interested, so that again, like you can say yes to something that you already enjoy, and gain some experience with that informal and formal leadership in that way.
Great, and I think we have time for one more here.
Sure.
I work at a really small surgery center, and sometimes I wish I could get ideas from people who don't just work at our facility. What are your suggestions for collaborating outside of my facility?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, of course, I think about getting involved. Like if you are a member of SGNA or AORN, get involved in those type of communities. Even something as simple as like LinkedIn or a social media site. I think it's an area that we don't think about sometimes when we're working on the floor in healthcare, that those opportunities are right there for us, and it's a lot of great thought leaders. So I think those are some other ways that you can collaborate with people. There's great, wonderful, exciting new things happening out there like hackathons, and I'm absolutely excited about hosting one of those and with our team as well, where you kind of solution generate with a group of people from different areas, and get to really address some of those things, which anyone with experience in healthcare knows we all have at least one at the top of our head, something that drives us nuts that we wish we could change. And this gives a really great opportunity to have that conversation and do that together, thinking of the broader picture. Something like that.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Michelle, for today's presentation. I'd like to encourage everyone to visit our sponsor to learn more about the products they provide our industry. You can visit them at keysurgical.com. A quick reminder, you can obtain your certificate by completing today's post-webinar survey. The survey will be emailed 1 hour after the completion of today's webinar. You must complete the survey to receive your credit hour, and you will be able to download the certificate directly from your computer once the survey is submitted. If you have any questions, you can reach us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. We'll be back next week with another great webinar. Visit ortoday.com/webinars for more details and complimentary registration. Have a great day, everyone.